we are discussing what is server. Server is nothing but a computer. If you just ask Google what is computer itself, so it says computer is a device to store and process the data. So that's it. Based on the usage, we call computer as a different name. For example, if you use it for personal purpose, then it is called as desktop or laptop. Okay, here you do a lot of things like listening songs and then watching movies, shopping, and internet. Everything you can do this here, right? So when you use a computer for your personal purpose, then it is called as desktop or laptop, okay, or office purpose as well. But if you use it a computer to host the applications, then it is called as server. If you use it a computer in your handy purpose, then it is called as mobile. Okay, usually invented for calls. Now it is more used for internet. Okay, so any electronic device which has CPU or processor, RAM, and then some storage, hard disk. So we often see all these features whenever we buy a mobile. We will check what is the processor, how much RAM, what is the storage, whether it is 4 GB, 64 GB, or nowadays we are getting 8 GB, 12 GB, 12 GB, 512 GB. So all these things we will check because we are interested in the RAM and storage, good processor, good RAM, good storage. Okay, so in a computer world, everything is a computer. Based on the usage, you call it with a different name. That's it. Server is not an exception for that. Server is also a computer, just like your mobile. Okay, but server only used for one specific purpose, hosting application. You should not use server for any other purpose. Okay, so it is just to host the applications. That's it. You should not use it for any other purpose. For example, you cannot log into your client server and you cannot surf the internet. You cannot do any other nasty things, right? So everything is tracked because it is only intended for the hosting of applications. So you should not worry about when you are listening the word of server. You just think it is a computer which has these three characteristics. And another thing is OS as well. Okay, so we check what is the OS, whether it is iOS or Android, which version. So these four characteristics you should have for any computer in this world. So nowadays, all the refrigerators also coming up with some smart features. So in the Internet of Things world, now refrigerators can do the orders from Amazon directly when there is some empty things. For example, in the egg tray in a refrigerator, if the eggs are over, then refrigerator itself can order from internet. Okay, so that is how the capabilities now with the smart refrigerators. Okay, so those refrigerators are coming in future. Directly they will order from the Amazon. So that is how all these four characteristics are useful. And in future, humans also will get a chips in our bodies. So those chips will have the sensors that can read our BP, sugar levels, heart pulse, everything it can read. And then it will send the information to the hospitals. Then hospital will analyze continuously every 1 hour. So what is happening with this person? And if there is something threshold, heart pulse is going down, then automatically an ambulance come to us and they will take us to the hospital. On the way to the hospital, automatically they will get the less traffic route. Everything will become automatic. So all these are happening. So now humans can also be called as computers because we have the chip inside our body that has these four capabilities. Okay, so let us think in a broader way. Whenever you just connecting to a laptop, just think it is again a computer with all these four characteristics. So that's what I want to say when we are talking about computer. So now what is OS? So as I said, every computer will have these three characteristics, right? So but we cannot directly interact with CPU, we cannot directly interact with RAM, we cannot directly interact with storage. So that work can be done by the operating system. So what is operating system finally? Operating system interacts with hardware. So nothing but CPU, processor, RAM, everything. So now it is a bridge between user and then software and then hardware. Suppose if you just think like operating system architecture. So operating system always sits in the middle. Okay, so this is our applications like whatever we are using, Windows, MS Office, and any other Chrome browser. Everything is application, and this application interacts with operating system. Operating system will interact with hardware. Okay, so since we are not an electronic engineer, so there is an operating system, so that will take our inputs and then pass it to the system hardware like CPU, memory, and then storage. So it is it interacts with hardware, and it has few components. Just like a human, we have a very important organ in our body is like a brain and heart. So it has few components that are very important. That is called kernel. Kernel is like heart of OS. So inside operating system, kernel interacts with hardware. And we have few more other components like utilities, shell. Shell takes the input from user, pass to kernel. And few utilities we can have. So now if you just see what is the architecture, so like this. So this is the hardware, and this is the kernel, this is the shell, this is the application. For example, either Windows or Linux or Mac OS, this is the all of the operating systems. Every operating system should follow this architecture. Okay, so when I am just clicking this new tab here, what is happening? This application is calling the shell. So you know Windows has the MS-DOS, okay, that is in background. So we cannot see that anyhow. BIOS also is the blue screen, right? Whenever you start a system, you will get blue screen of some menu, everything. So that is the shell, we can say in the background. So this will interact with the shell, and shell will interact with the kernel. Kernel will interact with the hardware. So this is how the application. So this is how the operating system architecture will be. So it can be in either Android, can be either Windows, it can be anything. So that all operating systems follows this architecture. Linux is not an exception for that. Will also follow the same. Okay. So how Linux started is a short story. So back in 1990s, so Unix operating system was very famous, but it has some disadvantages. So those disadvantages are very costly. Like normal people cannot install Unix OS in their computers. Okay, only companies with more more money and more budget, they are only using Unix OS, and it is tightly coupled with hardware. Okay, so for example, when you buy a Dell laptop, you can use Windows, you can use Ubuntu, you can use Fedora, you can use any operating system you like. But Unix OS, it will not work with any system. It has a special hardware. So here Unix plus hardware, you should take both from them. So Unix will directly, you cannot take the Unix OS and you cannot install in your Dell laptop. You cannot install in your server. You cannot do that. Okay, Unix comes with its own hardware. So that is the tight coupling between the hardware and software. So it means it is not portable. You cannot take the Unix OS and then install it wherever you want. So this is one of the main advantage, and it is very costly. Okay, but it is secure. So there is one guy, Linus Torvalds. He is working in this Unix systems, he bought one new computer that is MS-DOS at that time. Okay, it is from IBM. He uses the Microsoft shell actually. So there was no Windows operating system like this. Earlier at that time in 1980s, so people has to log into the shell and then do whatever they want. Okay, they cannot access the browsers, they cannot access the graphical interfaces like Paint, Notepad, all those things. Everything was a shell based at that time. So this guy, he found this is not, I want to install a kind of hardware like Unix, but it should come for free. Okay, and then no hardware locking. It means it should be portable. So that's how he thought, and then he created his own operating system based on Unix principles. Because he knows Unix, he is working in Unix programming. So he created from the scratch, did not copy any Unix code. He created from the scratch using C language. Okay, Unix also is based on C language. So based on Unix principles using C language, he wrote a kernel plus shell and named it as Linux. Okay, so just for fun, he created a OS to use it in his own laptop and then with from the scratch. And then he is like kernel plus shell, that is called as Linux. So usually everybody thinks like Linux is an operating system, but we prefer to call Linux as a kernel. So on top of this kernel and shell, so he released it to the public. Okay, he made it completely open source. Anybody can download this code. Anybody can change this code and do it experiments, and then they can install it in their own laptops by that time. So it was gaining popularity day by day, and at the end of 1990s, so Linux is becoming like cancer. So one famous scientist in computers at that time, so defined Linux is a cancer. Okay. So because it was growing rapidly, so everybody was using costly operating systems like Unix, Microsoft, but Linux is coming for free with all the advantages of any operating system. And it is more efficient than everything. So someone called as Linux as cancer. From 2000, it is gaining popularity. So now it is 96% of the servers in this world are running in Linux. Okay, it includes supercomputers, everything. If you just go to the Wikipedia of Linux, somewhere they have mentioned 96%. 96.4% of the millions of servers are running on Linux. Okay, it has the fastest supercomputers also running on Linux. So that is how it gained the popularity. Now we will discuss why it is very good than any other operating system by that time. Okay, so any company or any person, so whenever they are installing something, we just want less cost. Okay, and more performance. So when we buy the laptop, we always think for more performance and less cost, and it should be secured also. So these are the main three features we think, right? So obviously Linux is free, so it is less cost. More performance. Why it is more performance in the server world is, suppose I am running the Windows, you can see in background how much memory it is taking. I'm just using the browser and Notepad for now, but it may be using, you can see how much memory it is using. So mine is 16 GB RAM. It is using 70% of the memory. Okay, and then 14% of the CPU of 1 TB hard disk. Okay, 70% of 16 GB is nothing but more than 10 GB. So just for two Chrome browsers and one Notepad, it is consuming a lot of memory. The memory is going because for all the applications running inside the background, that comes from graphical user interface. So if you are seeing some icons, this images has some memory. So it is a rich layout, a rich graphical interfaces. So everything consumes memory. So that is why it is more graphics, more memory, obviously. Okay. So, but in Linux server operating system, there will be no graphics. Everything is a command and text based. So obviously, so it will consume less memory. More speed. Processing graphics will take a lot of time than processing text. So that's why Linux server operating system is more performance. And then it is originally followed the Unix security principles. Okay, so it is secure than Windows. Okay, we will see why it is more secured in further sessions. Okay, will understand. So any person, any project, or they want these three principles. So that is why Linux is completely fulfilling this, and it has more community support as well. No one owns Linux. It is completely open source. You can also contribute if you're willing to. And if you face some errors, definitely there will be a solution in the internet. So earlier companies were using Unix operating system. Now they came out of the Unix, and then everybody is using Linux for free of cost. So the burden on the companies and projects are heavily reduced. So that's why Linux is becoming very popular nowadays. So I can say Linux is a kernel. Okay. So since it's an open source code, open source kernel with shell, anyone or any company can take this open source, and then they can create some utilities on top of it. If you see the architecture of the operating system, Linux operating system architecture. Okay, kernel shell on top of these applications like some package managements and some other commands. So those things will be changed. You can have Ubuntu, right? Ubuntu can be used as desktop operating system or server operating system. So Ubuntu has its own 1% of differences between this Linux and shell. So generally, any company will take this open source Linux code, and then they will add some more utilities and release it as their own version. Just like Ubuntu, CentOS, Fedora, Android. Android is also a Linux operating system. You just see Android. You can see Linux kernel. Okay, so this kernel and shell, originally they don't have graphics. If you add Linux plus shell plus graphics equal to, so that can be Android, Ubuntu desktop, and there are many things like Fedora, all those things. We have a lot of desktop softwares as well. But if you don't use graphics, then it will be used for the servers, some utilities. So Linux can be used as server operating system. Linux can be used as desktop operating system. If it is desktop operating system, it will have Android and then Ubuntu desktop, all those graphics. But we don't need to break our head to call Linux is OS or kernel. Okay, just we understand the difference, then it doesn't matter whether you call it as OS or kernel. So this is the short basic description of Linux. So now you should understand the importance of Linux, why it is more popular, because of its performance, no cost, and then security. All those things you should understand. And one more thing, it is very stable. If you don't use our Microsoft operating system or Windows operating system for a few days, then after you come and then check, then it will be stuck, right? So again, it will take some time, 5 to 10 minutes time to load it and to give you properly response. But Linux can run without restarting or without doing anything. It can run for years. Okay. So that is the stability of Linux. And low power. So power is also a very key resource. If you use Windows operating system, then it will consume some power because of the graphics and other internal components. But Linux, it will not have any graphics, and it already designed for consuming low power. So less cost, more performance, more security, more support, highly stability, and low power. So all these features now becoming more popular with the Linux operating systems. That's why it is even used in supercomputers. Maybe in future, we may use it in quantum computers also. So this is the short basic description about Linux. I just want to tell you why Linux is very important. And then, yeah, even now Windows accepted the importance of Linux, and the .NET now supporting Linux. Okay, earlier .NET can only be installed in Windows servers. Now from .NET Core, we are installing .NET into Linux servers as well. So finally, Microsoft lost the war, and even Bill Gates, everyone accepted the growth of Linux and the importance of Linux. So now we will get into the how to create Linux server, and then how can you connect to it. Okay. So how can we connect is nothing but authentication and authorization. Okay, it's a universal concept, right? If you are logged into your Windows laptop, you need to give your username and password for any system. You should give your username and password. So now if I open Facebook, I should provide the username and password. So similarly for servers or desktop, anything, you should provide the username and password. So there is some few basics on this. What you know is the password. What you have is a key. Maybe you know these things RSA keys. So in financial companies, we often see this kind of device. It will be generating the OTP every 30 seconds. Okay, this is what you have. Password is what you know. And what you are is your fingerprint. Fingerprint, palm, or retina. So all these things are what you are. So what you are is more secure than what you have. What you have is more secure than what you know, because a password can be 8 to 20 digits of simple word. Anybody can remember, but this key, generally it will be with you. Okay, unless you lose it. Okay, so that is why it is more secure and what you are. So someone cannot simply theft our fingerprints and retinas, right? So obviously what you are is more secure. So in Linux, we go for these two when it is a server purpose. Okay, what you know, you can use username and password, but that is not secure. So we will go for what you have, username and then key. So this is a physical key. Okay, but we have a virtual key that is called public key and private key. So you should understand public key and private key mechanism as well. For example, let us just discuss a simple example, that is, can say as such. So this is a box, just like a physical box we use in our home. Okay, trunk box. And then you will lock it. Okay, so this box, I can see the box if I go somewhere, and I can see the physical lock as well, but who can really open this? Someone who have the key can only open this, right? So this is the key for this lock. So these two are a pair. So this we can call it as public key. This we can call it as private key, because public can see this lock, but nobody cannot open until they have this key. So in software world also, there is a mechanism of public key and private key. Public keep inside the server. Okay, so this is a box, right? So in software, generally we call server usually as box. We call it as node. Okay, so you can use any name. Generally, instead of calling Linux server, sometimes we call it as Linux box, Linux node. So this public key will be inside the server, and private. Whoever wants access, they have private key. Okay, so just like in our physical world, so you can see the box. Like here, you can understand you can know the Linux server IP address. You can know the public key, but you cannot open until you have the private key. Just like this, you can see the box, you can see the lock, but you cannot open it until you have the key. So this is the secure mechanism of authentication in Linux. Okay. So we use this public key and private key mechanism to connect to the Linux server. Okay. So how can you generate this public key and private key? So there is a command called SSH-keygen. Okay, SSH key generation, and then you can just give -f and the file name. Okay, so then it can generate public key and private key. Okay, so let us run this command once. So you can use this in Windows CMD. Okay, you can use it in command prompt as well, SSH-keygen, if you can see. Okay, but we prefer generally git bash. Just download git bash. Okay, just download it for Windows. If you run this, you can you can install it easily, like just like your VLC software. Okay, just go next. So git bash. If you just open this. Okay, so git bash is nothing but a mini Linux in Windows. You can use Linux commands up to some extent, not completely, in Windows OS. Okay, so if you just see in the command prompt, so you cannot run this Linux command. ls is like listing, but here you can run the Linux command. Okay, So that is why it is called as mini Linux. All of you can simply download and install it in your computers. Okay, now let us just run here SSH hyphen keygen hyphen F, and then let us call it as Linux course. Okay, you can enter the passphrase. Generally, you can go for just enter. Then it is created 2 files. That is like, it will go to the users and then your username and here. So this is the user directory, right? You can see Linux course and Linux course.pub. So this is the public file. If you just open it with Notepad++, this is the public file. Okay. The structure is SSH-RSA, some random code, and then your username @laptop name. Okay, so SSH-RSA, some code, username @computer name. So this is the structure of physical key or public key. Okay, so this is private key. Generally, we call it as an extension of .pem. Okay, extension doesn't matter. Just for our purpose, I'm just renaming it as .pem. You can open this. The structure is like this. A simple code, begin and then private key. So whenever you see a public key and private key, you should understand with this structure, it is public key. With this structure, it is private key. Okay. So now we will create our AWS account. Okay, I already posted one video how to create AWS account. So in this course, we are going to use AWS account just for provisioning the server. If you have any Ubuntu desktop and to practice Linux, you don't need AWS account. But in your Windows laptop, if you want Linux OS, it is very difficult. Usually people go with Oracle VM VirtualBox. So that will consume a lot of power from our laptop. So laptops may crash. So don't go for any virtual VMware. If you have Ubuntu or Mac, then you can use your terminal directly. Otherwise, just create an AWS account. It is free. I already posted a video in our channel. I can give that link as well. Okay. So just sign into the console. Go for any region. For example, let us go for Mumbai region. And here there will be something called EC2. Okay, you don't need to understand the full cloud concepts. Just create the AWS account and create the instance. For this, you don't need to learn AWS. Okay, you go to the EC2 instance. These are nothing but servers. So in our olden days, like till 2015-16, all the servers we are creating in our on-premise. On-premise is nothing but you will come your company data center. So everything we have to manage, like network, power, racks, all these things we need to manage, just like data center. So data center is maintenance is very high. You need to provide a physical space and a box structure like this. Okay. And a person should be continuously working for networking, cabling, power, cooling. So it's a lot of cost. So that's why cloud companies came up and then they are taking care of all the responsibilities. Just you do few clicks, you will serve, your server will be ready. You don't need to worry about installing operating system, connecting network, connecting power, cooling, ACs, all these things you don't need to worry. Everything can come directly from the cloud. You just need to pay on the hourly price. So it is a free trial anyhow, you don't need to worry about that. So here, when you come to the EC2 here, there will be key pairs here. Okay, so you can create a key pair. For example, Linux, if I give Linux, just select PEM format, .pem, okay, and create a key pair. So that will give you private key. So AWS is holding the public key, okay. They gave you private key. In background, AWS is running this command as a such hyphen keygen. What is this? Okay, in background, AWS is running as a such hyphen keygen, and whatever the file name you are giving, and it is holding the public key, and then it is giving you the private key. So this is one method, or else you can import the key pair. So we created as Linux course, right? Just give Linux course and then import the key pair, this one, public key. Okay, and then import. Okay, so this is also a public key. This is also a public key. Okay. Yeah. So that is how, just I told you to understand how can you generate keys manually and how to understand the public key and how to understand the private key. So that's why I explained this topic. Usually you can directly ask AWS to create. So now let us create one instance here. Go to the instance, launch instance, and then name it as any name, Linux. And here there is an AMI. AMI is nothing but you need to select your operating system. So in Linux, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, this is mostly companies use this. Okay, this is open source, actually open source code. Okay, this is licensed actually. Why companies take this when the Linux operating system is free? Because this will give us some support. If you face any errors inside the operating system, and if you want to set up installation, everything, then RHEL will take care. Red Hat company will take care of all those things. You don't need to worry about errors. You don't need to worry about management. So they will take care. Usually financial banks, companies, they can afford RHEL. It is very costly, but some companies like any small companies, medium range companies, based on the project budget, they go for other OS like CentOS. This is a free. So what Red Hat does is they will give the code. So this Red Hat, where it took the code, actually it is taking the code from Linux kernel. Okay, and they added some features that is equal to RHEL. Okay, but underlying 99.99% it is same. Okay, everything follows Linux kernel only. So Red Hat Enterprise is taking the code from Linux, and they're renaming it and adding some features and opening it as Red Hat Enterprise Linux. They will give us the code. Okay, they welcome everybody to develop. What this CentOS will does is, CentOS, they will take the code of RHEL and building it, releasing it as CentOS. Okay, but here you will not get the support directly from the company. But if you use RHEL, if you take the Red Hat subscription, then within hours they will resolve the issue. But CentOS, if you get some error, you need to go for CentOS community support. So there you will check when maybe others are facing the, just like we go to the Stack Overflow whenever we get some issue, right? So whenever you are using CentOS, if you face some issue, you need to go for CentOS community support. There you need to find if there are someone is already facing this kind of issue, and you need to post your issue that will go for large discussion. It will take too much time for the issue to be resolved. Okay, but mostly nobody will face the issues. Okay, very rare. But financial companies, they cannot afford the single issue also. Okay, so that's why they go for RHEL, and small companies, medium range companies, they can go for CentOS. So basically Red Hat Enterprise Linux, CentOS, both are same. Okay, but we cannot go for Red Hat Enterprise Linux for practice because that will be costly. Let us use CentOS. This is 100% same. So this is the OS. Even Amazon Linux 2 AMI is also taking the Red Hat Enterprise Linux code, and then they are doing something and renaming it as AWS Linux 2. You can use this also to understand the RHEL. Okay, and another operating system, Ubuntu, is also very famous. So there will be lot from Oracle. There is something like Oracle SUSE. Okay, so many operating systems are there in this world. Everything follows this Linux kernel, 99.9% same. Just a single one, few commands will be changed. That's it. Okay, so let us use CentOS or AWS Linux 2 for our course. Okay, since it is a free, you can go for Unix, Ubuntu also. Go to the AWS Marketplace AMI and search CentOS 8 because 8 is the latest version. Okay, select, you can select this one, AWS Linux. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, CentOS 8. Okay, but architecture, you should see this one, 86 into 64. This is the architecture we use. ARM processor is different. Let us use this. Okay, previous version was CentOS 7. It was very popular. CentOS 6, CentOS 7 is very popular, and latest version we got is CentOS 8, and then CentOS 9 is also released. Okay, just select this. Okay, this is a free tier. You don't need to worry. And then continue. So while creating a server, first thing I said there should be 4 characters, right? So one is CPU, RAM, storage, and then operating system. We selected the operating system. And then instance type. So this instance type has, you can see, 1 CPU, 1 GB RAM. This is free trial eligible. More than T2 micro, don't go for T2 small. Those are chargeable. If this is not chargeable, it comes for free. So we are selecting the CPU and we are selecting the RAM. And now here you can select your key pair. So you can create a key pair again. For example, you can say Linux OS, or you can use the existing keys as well. Just go for PEM format and then create key pair. So private key will be downloaded for you, and then just use it as Linux OS. Okay. Selecting key pair is also very important. And network, by default, it will go for default network. Okay, you don't need to do anything here. Just leave it as it is. And then the storage, this is the hard disk. Okay, you can go for 10 GB. So this is free, that is more than enough. That's it. Naming your server, selecting the OS, and then selecting the instance type of CPU and then RAM, attaching the key pair. This network configuration, you can keep it default, and this is the hard disk. Just click on launch instance. Okay, this doing the subscription. Okay. Fine. So what I do is I'll explain the subscription later. So what I do is I will just I'll just use Linux, AWS Linux for now. Go for AWS Linux 2, T-tier. Same, go for T2 micro and then key pair Linux OS, default networking. You can keep it 8 GB, it's fine, whatever is default. Now launch the instance. Okay, this is our instance. Just remember, you need to use AWS Linux 2 because it is the stable. AWS Linux 23 is just released. So this is our server, AWS Linux. Yeah, anyhow, both are coming into the running state now. So when you click this or click this, you will have the IP address. Okay, so this is the public IP address. So from here, git bash, how can you connect the server is, there will be a simple syntax. SSH, it is nothing but secure shell. This is a protocol. So when you hit facebook.com here, so what is this protocol? If you just go here, you can see HTTPS protocol. Any server to connect, you should have some protocol, username, password, or private key, and then port number. So by default, HTTPS uses 443. If you just give 443 and enter, okay, it is by default. It will not show you. And HTTP uses port number 80. So these are the popular protocols, right? Port number 80, and then HTTPS port number 443, and SSH port number 22. So every protocol has its own purpose. HTTP, you will connect to the websites. SSH, you can get the complete access to server. Can do anything, but Facebook cannot connect to the Facebook server using SSH port number 22, right? So because they will not allow you, they will only allow you to connect to the HTTP or HTTPS. That's it. Okay. If you are the owner of, if you are an employee in the Facebook, then you can connect to the Facebook servers for any development or maintenance purpose. So ultimately what I want to say is, if you want to connect to any server, you should have these protocol, username, password or private key, and then port number. For Linux, we use SSH connectivity. SSH, by default, it uses port number 22. So you need to mention -I. You need to give your private key. And then what else? Username @ IP address. Okay, now you can see this is the protocol. By default, it will take port number 22, and this is the private key, and this is the username, and this is the IP address or host name. Okay, so this is the syntax. So here, so we have our key downloaded, or okay, let us keep here. So SSH, let me make it clear. SSH-I, the key is in downloads folder. What is the key? linuxos.pem. linuxos.pem. Username by default for easy to user for the Amazon Linux @ copy this IP address. Okay, it is asking, just use S. So now you are inside the server. You can see you are inside the server. So as I said, there are no graphics. It is just a black screen with a text. So in Linux, everything is text. Okay, software, whatever files, everything is text only. So now we are inside the server. So now let us connect to this one. Try to connect this one. This is CentOS, right? So take another git bash. Just search in your Windows, okay? Windows prompt. Take another git bash. SSH -i downloads Linux os.pem. For CentOS machines, the username is CentOS@IP address. Now you are inside the CentOS server. Okay, so understanding this connectivity is very, very important, because whatever the technology you are in, either you are in data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, or Internet of Things, any technology, any big technology, everything in IT world is connecting computers. I can say software or IT technology is nothing but exchanging information between computers. So this basic point it should come to your mind whenever you face some problem. So how I am exchanging information with Facebook here? I open Facebook in my browser. So this browser brought the Facebook website from Facebook server to my computer, and I am using the username and password login. Then my laptop send this information to the Facebook server. So that is how you should think. Okay. So how we connected to our server here. So it is our laptop. Okay, Windows laptop. So for example, here we are in Hyderabad. And then somewhere in Mumbai, there is a Linux server in Amazon data center. Okay. So from here to here, you are making a connection. So to make that connection in your laptop, you are running SSH passing -i private key and then username @IP. Okay, so then this laptop is sending your connection request. So this is sending the connection request to the server. It should accept the connection. If you are a right user, then it will give you connection. Otherwise, it will not give you connection. For example, if you give any to come out of this, just press exit. Okay, if you give any wrong username, obviously you cannot connect. So this server is doing the validation. Who is the incoming user? If they are providing right credentials, then they will give you the access. Okay. So here in EC2, there is one important thing. If you go to security here, security groups, it is allowing port number 22 from each and every IP address. So this is like a firewall to any server. You should understand this. If you want to open port number 80, just go here, edit inbound rules, add. You can say port number 80, that is HTTP, and from all the IP addresses in this world. Okay, usually we don't give all, we will restrict the access. You can see it is port number 80. Now here, what is this instance? Linux, right? CentOS instance. So now here, dollar means normal user. Okay. So just like in our Windows, we can have multiple users, right? So that is normal user. If you want to get root access, just give sudo su hyphen. Now it will be root access. Hash means root user. Okay, here if I install like yum install nginx -y. No need to worry, we are going to discuss all these things. Just I want to show you how this security groups will work. Okay, usually in Linux servers, you will not, until it is required, you will not get the root access. Okay, for security. To install anything, obviously you should have root access. systemctl start nginx. Okay. Now it is started. Now I just now added this, right? I'm removing this for now. Now, if you try to open this IP address in the browser using HTTP, okay, if you don't give HTTP also by default, it will not get anything because HTTP uses port number 80. Here, port number 80 is it's not open. Now go here and then open HTTP. By default, it will take port number 80. Okay, and open for everyone. Now save. Now you just come here and then refresh. You can see you are able to see the Nginx website. It means your laptop is sending the connection on port number 80 to the server. So inside this server on port number 80, there is an Nginx server installed and it is giving you the response. So usually all the web pages here, all the websites generally uses Nginx server so that you can get the information. Okay, so we can stop till here today. So just a simple recap what we discussed. So we understood what is server. Actually, server is just nothing but a computer which have all the capabilities of CPU, processor, RAM, and storage. But server, you don't use it for any other purpose except to host the applications. Okay. And then Linux is very popular because of its no cost, more performance, and then secure, community support, highly stable, consumes low power. Even supercomputers run on Linux. So, and then Linux is like a kernel actually. On top of this kernel, some companies develop utilities and then they are releasing it as distributions. Okay. So later we discussed SSH protocol. SSH protocol works on port number 22. It takes username, either password or private key. And then we discussed what is public key and what is private key. We generated public key and private key. And then we created a server in AWS, and then we connected to it using SSH. Okay, so these are the things we did today. So if you come out of this, just press exit. Exit. Okay. So all of you should have a basic understanding of how are you connecting to the server. If you are facing some problem, for example, if I delete this port number 22, then you are not able to connect. Okay, it will be timeout. So whenever there are some connection problems, you should just think you are using the right syntax, you are using the right PEM file and username, IP address, and this one. Okay, firewall. Okay, so that's it. And anyhow, this class is recorded. I will post it into the YouTube channel, and then in this website also you can see this. Okay, in techworldwithshiva.com, this recording will be uploaded within 2 hours. Just go to the courses. Yeah, here you can see login. You'll have dashboard, then you can see that. Okay. Yeah, so just we will take a few questions, 1 or 2 questions. Ram, you have a question?
Yes, Shiva.
Yeah.
Actually, for Windows servers, we'll do the patch activity like Windows upgrade and all.
Yeah.
Right. For the Linux server, it is same for Linux.
Yeah,
as well?
Linux servers also it is there.
It means like
yeah,
there is the upgrade version for the Linux as well.
Patches, we do some security patches. Yeah, there will be Linux upgrade also. If you are using CentOS 7, then if you want to use CentOS 8, then you need to do the version upgrade, right? Just like how we do in our Android. So whenever a new OS is released, then we will go for upgrade. Similarly, here also we should do. Linux administrators will do.